The next two items are traffic related, so I will turn it over to Derrick Kennedy, our traffic engineer.
Thank you. Yeah, so the Brixmor traffic study was submitted by the developer the end of November, I believe. It was a post-development analysis, which basically compared where they're at now with their build out, these were 77%, to the 100% build out scenario, and then comparing that also back to the original TIS that was done in the past as was going through the development application. We reviewed the TIS, we provided a response, submitted it back to them, I believe on January 25th. So right now the ball is in their court to respond back to our review comments. Just to kind of summarize what those comments were, the report was basically a comparison of scenarios with the level of service results that we see from the studies. It didn't include any mitigation or recommendation type alternatives. So we're asking them to come back with us with a little more insight of what type of options and mitigation factors would they consider or look at.
Now, when I looked at the comments, when it came out that several of the intersections were performing poorly, it's kind of like what maybe asked for you to come this evening. So they are in the process of working with you to come up with some mitigation strategies where possible.
Correct.
And then the other question I just wanted clarification on. There was the intersection of Sycamore Street and Silo Drive. I think I answered my own question as I looked through the 148 pages. I think I found it on some of the figures that they had with the lines and so many people turning right, so many people turning left, and all the numbers. I think I found what it's referring to when you say the westbound approach is one way eastbound, but the traffic figures show people coming out of there.
Correct.
So I think I answered my question.
Right. So the analysis assumes, even though it's one-way traffic,
right,
it analyzes that fourth leg, which is something I think for the Sycamore Street discussion is we should look at, because I know it's a private driveway, but there's probably an opportunity to improve the signage and striping there to mitigate those errant vehicles that shouldn't be there. So those results, if we can take that down to truly a three-leg intersection and remove that entering traffic from that fourth leg, we'd see a benefit as well as far as local service.
So thank you. Anyone else?
Yes, I had questions about the LOS that was mentioned in your report. Can you put that into some kind of context? I know that in a traffic study done by Wawa at the intersection and the bypass where they're going to build, they had a LOS of D, which was, they said, the traffic engineer says, was acceptable in urban areas. I don't think Newtown is an urban area, but some of the LOS figures for this Brixmor is F, and so that's, is that 2 orders of magnitude worse than a D?
Yeah, so the level of service system, right, it comes from the Highway Capacity Manual, which is the industry standard for analyzing intersections, highway interchanges, all kinds of transportation facilities. So basically, similar to a report card, right? A is good, F is bad. But for intersections, it's basically based on average delay. So as your average delay goes up, your level of service, it degrades. It is true, level of service D is typically what's acceptable in urban or developed areas. But that rule of thumb doesn't equate to if a developer sees a level of service F, that's a requirement to get it back down to D. Usually there's a sliding scale, so ideally D is acceptable. If they're coming in and it's already an F, it's not a wild card to, the applicant has to fix that. They typically have to get it back to where it was or better. And then going the other way, if you were a B, which is acceptable, and you bump it up to a D, it's still a significant increase, and they may have to do mitigation factors to go back to closer to, the level service B as well.
Right.
So generally, it's a general rule, D or better is acceptable in.
Okay, but your report says consider mitigation factors, but the development agreement specifically states that the developer shall perform at its sole cost and expense a traffic study, and developer shall install at its sole cost and expense those additional traffic improvements that developer and township mutually agree are necessary as a result of the developer's traffic study. So we're not just saying consider, we're saying you have to do something. I think with regard to the agreement that we have with Brixmor, is that correct?
Or you have to reach some accommodation.
Yes, so in this
Between
case, if we're seeing level service F, at some of those intersections, I don't think it would be reasonable. We probably wouldn't want to see an improvement plan that would get it to D, right? With the number of lanes and signal lighting, it would be probably excessive. But, can we make spot improvements, where we change distribution, maybe ban a movement here or there and get some, reduced benefit. I don't know, not sure what those would be yet, but we're working with them to get there.
So there may be some specific recommendations that you're talking to them about, perhaps?
Right.
Okay. Those are all my questions, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Matt. Anyone else? Okay. Seeing none, there's Sycamore Street.
Okay, yep, so Sycamore Street. Last month we submitted our draft report. I think everyone on the board saw that report. We gave an update. Since then, we've been out on the site. We collected site distance information at Silo and some of the other driveways along the Carter to see where we had deficiencies or not. We've looked at lighting conditions and analyzed what the conditions would look like with upgraded lighting. As far as site distance, what we found at Silo, if you're at the stop sign coming down Silo looking to the left, there is a deficiency that's related to the on-street parking. So stop sign looking left, so your near side parking aisle is blocking the view. We should have at least, I think it was 250 feet of sight distance there. So our recommendation is going to be eliminate one parking spot, and that will give you adequate sight distance coming out of Silo. Lighting, I think there is some work going on in collecting bids from contractors to change out to the existing bulbs to a brighter LED bulb on the lanterns that are out there now.
I have a question about the lighting. I know down at Jefferson Street, there's the traditional street lights, which are high up.
Mm-hmm.
The lights at the Silo are these antique-looking, nice looking, but will they truly be able to be upgraded to the extent required to improve visibility with LEDs?
They will. What's out there now, and I think it might have been the intent to design, it's a little bit subdued lighting. I think maybe that was the intent for the homey Main Street type feel, I suspect. But what would be put in there with the LEDs would be a brighter white, light, so it would significantly light it up to where it would be
Well, I'm not sure that would stop the cars from zooming through there when I know at least one resident might have something to say about that, because you also recommended these RRFBs, the rectangular rapid flashing beacons.
Correct.
Which anybody who wants to use a crosswalk would push a button and they would flash, and I think that would really give notification to motorists, drivers, that somebody wants to be on the crosswalk, whether there's lighting there or not. Are we still considering that?
That recommendation, I think, is still a recommendation. So, that could move forward. I think the next steps that we need to look at is the issue of speed limit, which is linked to going to PennDOT and getting the RFBs will require a signal permit. We'd also require PennDOT approval to reduce the speed limit. So in the next month or two, we'll be looking at the speed issue out there, building that case, so when we go to PennDOT, we have the data we need.
Well, does that process preclude actually moving forward with these flashing beacons?
They could be separate. I think having PennDOT accept the concept and approve a permit at 25 miles per hour is an easier sell than 35.
I'm sorry, say that again.
The RFBs will require PennDOT approval.
Why is that?
So all there is considered a signalized device, and PennDOT has authority over all. Any signalized device is approved by PennDOT now. The township would have maintenance responsibility, ownership of it, but the permit would be issued by the state.
So all this is bundled together with your communications with PennDOT?
Correct.
And if I may, that when we gave some direction to items 1, 2, 3, and 5, we also then gave some directions for the signal, the beacon system, and the speed limits to come kind of like after. I mean, it's not you're working concurrently with it, but those will take a little longer.
Yeah, and the reason the speed study is lagging a little bit, we want to get data when the weather gets a little warmer. If we go out there in a week like in February and collect speed data, it's not necessarily indicative of what we're trying to do. We'd rather have a little more activity out there, nice weather, so we're kind of waiting around to collect that data. And I did have a recent discussion with Chief Hearn. He may have some historical data available for some of this speed and data collection that he has, so I'll coordinate with him, and we'll use that data as well.
Well, I would just like to see this move forward as quickly as possible. For example, at the Sycamore, we really didn't need a traffic study to know that these intersections, you had to wait a long time before you get through them. I mean, we also know from experience on North Sycamore that people are speeding, people are not stopping for people on the crosswalk. So, I'm glad you're doing the study, but, we need to, in my opinion, move a little more quickly if we can. And I'm urging you to do that, and tell us when you'll be meeting with PennDOT and advancing this. So in the future, I hope we can get more information about that.
And I would just add that I think we all want it to be an expedient process, but we want it to be an efficient process too. So, okay.